wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ NV, Jess Hilarious, Charlamagne the Guy. We are the Breakfast Club. We got a special guest in the building.
Yes, indeed.
We have the governor, Gretchen Whitmer. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
How you feeling?
I'm feeling good.
Feeling good?
Would you like some tequila this morning, or is it too early?
I don't. Good tequila is fine any time of day, but I'm not going to start my day out that way today.
I don't know if she wants it because she can't keep it down. She keeps running back
one
out.
bad
That was high school.
experience.
I've grown since then.
Has that stuck with you your whole life, like that one story, and everybody always talks about that one thing?
Well, obviously what you're talking about is I drank too much when I was in high school, and you shouldn't have been drinking that at that young age anyway. But I got caught drinking at a high school football game. I was passed out. My principal came upon me, and I tossed my cookies on him. And, it was kind of a notorious thing at the time. Everyone in school knew it happened. I got suspended. I got in big trouble. My mother wanted to kill me. But I tell that story in my book because it was that moment where I screwed up, but I learned a lot. And got my act together, started, taking my academics more seriously. I had to because I was at home for a month, grounded, but...
Stop mixing your liquors, I'm sure.
Yeah, and
Rookie mistake for us all.
We learn when we screw up. If you're a person who evolves and you learn from it, then screw ups have value, right? So, got my act together, went to MSU, got into law school, and learned kind of a lesson that if you surround yourself by great people, it helps you achieve what you want to. You learn from smart people, and that's kind of been a philosophy of my life, but also how I've governed. And in the story, in the book True Gretchen, I talk a lot about people like Dr. Jonah Khaldun, who was my chief medical executive during COVID. And I'm proud, we've got one of the most diverse cabinets in state history in Michigan. And when you empower people and have real representation, empowered representation, you can get a lot of good stuff done. And I think that drinking story was maybe the beginning of my learning that when you got to surround yourself by good people.
Now, as a mom, hold on, one
question.
question. As a mom, what do you tell your kids, right? Because your kids are going to make mistakes, right? You have two daughters. Yep. And all I would say if I was your daughter is, Mom, what about you in high school? So what do you tell your kids?
Well, that's why I didn't tell them until after they were out of high school. But, we're all human, and we got to see the humanity in one another. We all fall short on occasion. We got to hope that you learn from those times, and I think that's what I've tried to instill in my own kids. They've made their own mistakes, but you know what? Fortunately, for my generation, we didn't all have cell phones. We weren't all recording it.
That's
it
true.
wasn't something that you had a receipt that you had to carry with you the rest of your life, and that's one of the things I try to encourage my kids to, give other people grace, give yourself a little grace, and put that damn phone down.
I only had two more questions about that topic. Number one, what was you drinking as a teenager, right? And did you get suspended for actually drinking or throwing up on the principal?
Vodka. It was vodka. It was easier to come by. And I got suspended for drinking.
Okay.
But I'm sure throwing up didn't help my cause.
Gotcha. I also like that you kept your book, True Gretchen, what I've learned about life, leadership, and everything in between. I like that you kept it short. And it's an easy read. Did you do that on purpose?
Yeah, Charlamagne, one of the things that I get asked the most, whether I'm traveling across Michigan or outside of Michigan, is how do I stay positive? I ran for re-election, and a lot of people said, why do you want to keep doing this? In my first term, I dealt with a pandemic, a president who targeted me, a plot to kidnap and kill me, 28 recall attempts. Dealt with flooding in Midland that wiped out dams and bridges. We had to evacuate 10,000 people in the middle of the night in the middle of a pandemic. Dealt with all the hate that came my way. And it was an understandable question. Rational people said, why do you want to keep doing this? And so this book really is that. It is kind of a handbook. 10 things I've learned in my life at different times in my life that I have used in situations that I've had to navigate as governor. And, I want to give people, maybe you can get a laugh at my expense about the drinking or knocking my teeth out. I talk about that in the book too. Maybe there's a lesson that'll give someone some inspiration when they're navigating a hard time, whether it's in the workplace or in their private life, or maybe it's just a little light reading in what I know is a heavy time for a lot of folks, all of us, right? And so that's really what it's about, trying to put a little light out in the world in a damn dark time.
It feels like a Judy Blume book in a way.
Well, I don't know what that means.
Oh, I love Judy
you.
Blume. Yeah,
I do too.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Judy Blume. It just feels like a adult Judy Blume book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's nice. I'll take that as a compliment because I think, I'm
it's like a coming of age tale in a lot of ways. Yeah.
I'm a real person. I'm an ordinary person. I got an extraordinary job. I'm serving an extraordinary time. But I am I'm a human being too. I'm got my shortcomings. I've got things I've learned along the way, and if there's something that I can share that might help someone, that's really what it's all about.
Why would you ever release a book during a presidential election year? Like, it's got to be a very awkward time, especially now with everybody talking about wanting Biden to step down. It has to be a very awkward time.
Well, obviously, when you write a book, you have no idea what is going to be happening by the time that book comes out.
Yeah. But you knew it was going to be a presidential election year.
I did. And that's why I wrote it, because I knew this was going to be heavy time. I knew it was going to be hard. You knew the matchup was going to be Donald Trump and Joe Biden again. And I thought, people are going to want some encouragement, and that's what I try to spread.
Did you speak with Biden before his debate, right? Because you talk about your previous debates and how you were loose. People looked at you as an ordinary person. They felt relatable. But I think sometimes people don't see that with Biden. Did you have those conversations with him to be like, loosen up a little bit, or did you have those conversations? Any pep talks?
I didn't, and in retrospect, maybe that was a missed opportunity on my part. I tell the story in the book. I was running for governor the first time in 2000, and I traveled all across the state. I was getting ready for my first debate. Emily's List, a great organization that helps women candidates, sent a debate coach to come talk with me. And the debate coach, I'm always interested in learning more. How can I do better? And it was a man, which kind of ironic, right? Your Emily's List, this organization sending a man to give me tips. But, he gave me a lot of good pointers. But one of the things he said was the happy warrior wins every debate. Whoever looks like they're having the most fun is the winner, no matter what people say. And I thought it was interesting. And his tip was, go in and remember to be the happy warrior. So as soon as you get to your podium, put a happy face on top of your papers. And anyone who's ever been told to smile knows it has the opposite effect. You tell me to smile, it pisses me off. I'm not going to smile. So I'm like, I'm never going to write a smiley face on the top. So I was thinking, what's going to put me in the happy warrior frame of mind? So a couple weeks before the first debate, we went to go see Kevin Hart at LCA in downtown Detroit. And he had a number of folks open up for him. And Naeem Lynn made this great observation that women are a lot more bold today.
Salute to Naeem. Yeah.
Back in the day, back in the day, if a woman was menstruating, she'd be real shy about talking about it. You say, come on, I want to come over and get together. And she'd say, oh, my aunt's in town, like Aunt Flo, right? Didn't want to say it, but wanted to communicate it. He said, today when you say, I want to come over and see you, and it's that time of the month, the woman say, you're not coming over, it's Shark Week, motherfucker. And I thought that was the funniest. I mean, I laughed my butt off, and I thought, that is going to put me in the happy warrior mode.
So you thought about being on your period during the debate?
No, it's Shark Week, motherfucker, let's go. So I went in and wrote that at the top of my paper, SW, MF. And that kept me loose and funny. And my colleague was all buttoned up, and he said, oh, I'm Bill Schuette on duty. And I said, welcome to Shark Week, and it just kept me loose and happy. And I got caught on a hot mic mouthing the word motherfucker. And it was during the Democratic National Convention. And I was just beside myself that someone sent out that footage because it was virtual 4 years ago.
Though? Like, I always wonder how much prep is too much prep, because I always say the language of politics is dead. So if that is how you talk, why can you not communicate like that? Because that's how most of America speaks.
I think you're right. And so, like, my initial reaction was, oh man, this came out and it'll.
You didn't say, oh man, you said, oh shit.
I did. I said, oh shit. And it came out, and this is what people are going to focus on instead of what I said. And I worked hard on that speech. I wanted people to hear what I said, and I thought, oh geez. But we embraced it. And you know what? People did too. People started showing up. They make candles that say, Shark Week, motherfucker. They got T-shirts, and I thought, you're right. This is how people talk. It resonated with people, and it turned out to be a really funny episode. And that's maybe the lesson, right? You got to be the happy warrior.
But why do politicians try to be so perfect or try to look so perfect, right? The world is not perfect. Nobody's ever perfect, but you try to be perfect. And then something comes out that shows that they're not. Well, yourself, you talk about everything in the book, from your teeth to your debate to the drinking. So people know, like, she's just like me. Like, she does the things that I do. She's effed up just like me. Why is it that thing of
Damn.
being perfect?
Damn.
No, she effed up. We all effed up.
I didn't think that. She's effed up just like
No,
me.
we all effed up. We all imperfect.
We've effed up.
human beings.
Yes. But not she's effed up.
But you know what I mean.
We've effed up.
Yeah, we're all real, right? And some people don't feel comfortable being real. One of the things I'm cognizant of is, the people that came before me made it easier for me to show up as I am. And I'm trying to make sure that I'm at least doing that for the people that come after me. Women, candidates who aren't often in the majority, right? Black candidates, brown candidates, LGBTQ candidates, right? Making space for people to show up as they are. Because it's those, I think, who lose touch with their humanity and forget to see that in others that get the least done that actually improve the quality of people's lives. And theoretically, that's what anyone runs for office for in the first place.
You have a chapter called Take Nothing Personally. And that's also one of the 4 agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. How hard is it to not take things personal when you are a public political figure? People are always talking about you.
Yeah.
How hard is it to not take those things personal?
Well, it's challenging. And I love that you raised the 4 agreements. I love that book. That's a book that, I've read frequently, and I actually just gave to all my 2 kids and my 3 stepsons for Christmas this last year. I gave it to all of them. It can be hard to do because, the media trolls are 24/7, nonstop. The people that'll show up and yell at you are feeling more emboldened than ever to say whatever they want, whether it's grounded in fact or not. And it can be challenging. But I think that it's also a great lesson to know that when people are lashing out, it's really not about you. It's about them. When people say, mean things about, the dress that you wear at your State of the State, or, how you wear your hair or whatever it is, it's about them. It ain't about you. And any energy you put into it, I think it takes away from energy you need to do real important stuff.
You talk about your hair. Why didn't your grandma want you to part your hair down the middle?
Beats the hell out of me. And I said, don't take that piece of advice, but work hard. Wait to get married a little later in life. I think those are good pieces of advice.
Yeah, she gave you 3 pieces of advice. What was it? Don't put your head down the middle.
Work hard.
Work hard. And don't get married until you're at least 28.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I think those were good pieces of advice.
Did you follow them all?
I did. I'm a hard worker.
Okay.
I know that I'm raised in a state that, we're full of people that work hard. Michiganders got grit. And I think that's, part of the title, right? True grit. It's true Gretch, but it's a play off that because I think grit is what really defines my philosophy and who the people of Michigan are. We work hard. We show up. We expect a fair shake. And I think that's what has centered a lot of the work that I do. And like so many people, I was lucky to have 2 great, phenomenal grandmothers who really had a massive impact on my life. Nino, my dad's mom, Esther, that's my middle name, Gretchen Esther. She was, raised on a farm in rural Ohio. She was at the age in her late 90s was lobbying people in her church to vote for Barack Obama. Wow. She was ahead of her time and in so many ways, strong feminist, and she taught me a lot. But trying to find the good in every situation and every person was something that she imparted on us. And she was the one who said even the meanest person in the world might have pretty eyes. Try to find the good, and that's something that I have found has been a real important lesson for me to have in the back of my head through all the crazy stuff that I've had to navigate.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. What's the good in Donald Trump? You said your grandmother said find the good in everybody.
Well, you know what? The one thing I can say about Donald Trump is he can read public sentiment. He doesn't know how to fix anything. He doesn't know how to do the job of a president. He treats people with disrespect and teaches people to hate. And, there are a lot of downsides, but he can read what's going on with people, and he can feed into it and feed off of it. And I think that's a talent. Does he use it for good? Hell no. But that is something that he does well.
What made you want to get into politics? What was the thing that says, this is what I want to do?
Yeah, it really was. The first time around was, I was practicing law. I had worked for the House Democrats. In Michigan, we had a tie in our state House, 55 Democrats and 55 Republicans. when I worked there, which was the only time it's ever happened in Michigan. And they had to work together. And that's when I cut my teeth in politics. I really got to see maybe the best in what government can be. And we have term limits in Michigan, and it was like so many women, it was someone else who called and said, your state rep can't run again. You should take a look at it. And I thought, me as I've always been active, but me as a candidate never dawned on me. But I kind of looked at the field of people and I thought, man, I can do as good a job as any of these yahoos. So I decided to throw my hat in the race, and I've won every election since. I've enjoyed public service immensely. But I didn't think when I was done in the legislature, I'd served 6 years in the House and then 8 years in the state Senate. I was a Senate minority leader. And the leader of 12 people in a body of 38. We got our teeth kicked in every damn day. And I thought, all right, I've done my public service. But the Flint water crisis became known. And just to refresh everyone's memory, Flint is a predominantly black city. It was a thriving city for many decades when General Motors had a huge presence there. As the company took resources out of Flint, poverty grew, and it was a city that didn't have a whole lot of support in state government. And at a time when budgets were tight, my predecessor appointed a emergency manager who went in and made catastrophic decisions not to treat the water. And the people in Flint got a lot of lead poisoning in their water. That became public, and that really was what drove me to want to run for governor. That the people of Flint deserve better. They need a governor who is going to make this right. And I looked at who was talking about running, and I thought, what? I know how to do it. I'm gonna get in this race. Donald Trump had just carried Michigan, 11,000 vote difference between him and Hillary Clinton in 2016. And I thought, I gotta get organized. I gotta get all across the state. And I spent 2 years campaigning in all 83 counties. I showed up in places Democrats write off often, and I won, and so many lessons from what happened around the Flint water crisis has driven the work that I've done to try to make it right, to ensure other communities don't have a catastrophe like they had in Flint. And we've made great strides. I'm proud of the work that we've done, but there's a lot more work to do.
Is the water fixed in Flint? Is it?
Yeah, so almost every pipe has been replaced. The ones that haven't, they had a hard time getting contact with homeowners that maybe don't live there anymore. So yes, the water is clean. We've expanded resources for nutrition for Flint kids, because we know to address lead poisoning, that's a very crucial component. We just started what we call RX Kids, which is monetary support for expectant mothers and babies. This is direct dollars into the household that was driven by Dr. Mona Hannah Atisha, who was the doctor that discovered the Flint lead crisis. So we've done a lot of really creative things. We're continuing to invest in Flint. And crazy to say, but in Michigan, we got great public park system, great state park system. The only county in Michigan that didn't have a state park was Genesee County, which is where Flint is. We've created a state park there, made great investment in downtown Flint so that people can have the kind of amenities that they expect everywhere else in the state, finally.
You've done some things in Michigan that I want to highlight because I think they're great. When you said some things, like you once said, you declared racism as a public health crisis, and you required all medical professionals to undergo unconscious bias training to improve health care and target disparities. What motivated you to make that kind of declaration?
Well, I think during the pandemic, we saw laid bare the real true discrepancy in treatment and access and information that is shared with and support for the Black community in particular. My lieutenant governor is Michigan's first Black lieutenant governor. Dr. Jonay Caldoun, who was my chief medical executive during during the pandemic, is an African-American emergency room doctor. She was one of the first in the country to look at the data, what was coming in. In the early days of our COVID experience, you here in New York, it was hot here, it was hot in New Orleans, it was hot in Chicago, and it was hot in Detroit. We had incredible number of people that were suffering from COVID, and it was disproportionately in the Black community. We have, in the early days of COVID, 40% of the deaths in Michigan were African Americans. 14% of our population is African American. And so Dr. J was the first one to see the early data. She was practicing in our emergency room. She saw it firsthand. And she said, this is disproportionately hit in my community. We got to have a targeted approach here. And so we created the Racial Disparities Task Force. We did specific outreach to the Black community. We spent a lot of money and resources making sure that people had access and had solid information. We drove those death numbers way down because of it. I'm telling you, I don't know that we would have been nearly as successful. It wasn't the fact that we had an empowered Black woman with the medical experience and the hands-on experience in downtown Detroit to really drive that policy. And that's why I'm always telling people, you know, diversity matters. Empowered representation, though, is key. It's not enough to have, you know, a proportion of voices around the table if you're not listening to them and if they don't feel empowered to really drive the plan. And, you know, most scientists are not skilled communicators like Joan Khaldun is. I was real fortunate to have someone that had both those skills. She was by my side in every press conference and designing the policy in Michigan and, you know, declaring racism a public health crisis, making sure that our racial disparities work wasn't confined to a pandemic because it existed before the pandemic and obviously can exist to this day. But I think we're making strides on it. And she and the lieutenant governor have been key leaders in that effort in Michigan.
Is the unconscious bias training something that's going to transcend past healthcare? Because I feel like that should be in law enforcement. That should be in the banking system. Like I feel like that should be in so many schooling. I feel like that should be in so many different spaces.
Absolutely. We require all state employees to go through it. So whether you're working with people in the healthcare space or in law enforcement or anywhere for that matter, it's important to recognize we all bring bias. Like we're human beings with lived experiences that inform how we act. If we're cognizant of it, we can do better. But if we're not talking about it, not thinking about it, not examining it, we aren't going to change anything. And so that training, I think, is really important. I went through the training just like everyone on my staff and throughout state government did. And I think more workplaces should require it because it's just an honest assessment of who we are, and it's how we grow. And I like to think most people want to do better, but we can't expect them to do better if they don't know better.
That's right. And it's another thing that you do that I like. And Governor Shapiro has a version of it in Pennsylvania, but it's the Clean Slate Bill and the Clean Slate for Kids that you signed. What is that about?
Well, I'll tell you, one of the days that...
if you need more water, feel free.
Oh, no, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay.
But one of the days that I think it will live with me for the rest of my life was, you know, we changed the laws in Michigan so that people can get their records expunged. We made sure that people that were, you know, sentenced or did time for marijuana offenses don't have that on their record anymore. It's now legal in Michigan, so you shouldn't have to carry that with you. And so we had a huge expungement fair in Flint, actually. We're talking a lot about Flint today, but this was in Flint. And the lieutenant governor and I were there. The secretary of state was helping people get registered to vote. There's a common misconception that if you have a record, you can't vote. Well, you sure as heck can. And we register people when they're leaving prison now to make sure that they are voting. And the attorney general was there so we could help people with paperwork to get all their records expunged. We had 1,000 people show up before 8 o'clock in the morning who were excited about this, giving them an opportunity to get into a better job because this old thing on their record was keeping them from getting gainfully employed or get housing. And so we've made big strides. There's always more work to do. But our bail reform, you're not sitting in jail because you don't have some money in your pocket for a civil infraction. We've made a lot of great policy changes, and we've helped a lot of people, get another opportunity, which is everyone deserves that. Why
aren't people going further on the marijuana thing? Like I read that you were considering pardoning a lot of nonviolent marijuana offenders. We saw what Westmore just did, in Maryland when it comes to misdemeanor convictions. Weed is legal in Michigan, so it seems like a no-brainer to just pardon all nonviolent marijuana offenders.
Absolutely. Yeah. Every state has a little different requirements to get it done. So Wes did a wonderful thing. I was really happy to see him use those powers. I don't have those kind of sweeping powers. So we've done it. We've gone through and done it, so many cases we've been able to move through, but we can't do it en masse like that, unfortunately.
So who has the power?
It just depends on the state. Different states have different executive authorities and powers.
I saw you say that governors are a competitive bunch.
Yeah.
And you talked about Governor Newsom in the book. Like, what did you mean by that? Because in the example you used was something in regard to social distancing. I don't want to tell the whole story, but
yeah,
like, what did you mean y'all are competitive bunch?
Oh no, I think governors are the best salespeople for their states. Mm-hmm. I got to see Jay Inslee talk about how great the state of Washington is when I was running for governor. I thought, oh yeah, this is going to be part of the job. Is I'm going to be the promoter of all of Michigan for the world, right? So we are a competitive bunch. In the book I talk a little bit about some ways that we're all human, right? And when we make a mistake, we should own it. And I was praising Gavin Newsom for owning a mistake that he'd made. I'd made a very similar one. And so that was an example. I think Newsom is a phenomenal leader. I think we're really lucky that we got so many great Democratic leaders across this country right now. We talked a little bit about Wes Moore. I know you had Josh Shapiro in here recently.
Love Governor Shapiro. He's
fantastic. Mm-hmm. Maura Healey from Massachusetts. I mean, we got leaders all across the state. Tim Walz from Minnesota. He swears even more than we do. So you should have him come in. But, it's a really incredible bunch of people. And I've learned so much from my colleagues, and we've helped one another. And I think, there's a real great crop of leaders right now.
Now, let me ask you a question. I know you're here to promote your book, but I wanted to ask you a question. A lot of people are not necessarily confident in Joe Biden right now. They don't know if they should go out and vote at all. Maybe people are thinking right now, maybe it's the lesser of two evils. What do you say to those individuals that are not 1,000% confident in Biden, maybe think Biden is too old, maybe think that he has early signs of dementia? What do you say to those people?
Well, I'll start with this. We all watched that debate, and, it was bad. I mean, that's an understatement. It was really bad.
Horrible.
And it shook a lot of people, and people are asking questions. And you know what? I don't have a problem with that. You should ask questions. You should demand that your leaders are up to the job. I believe that Joe Biden is. And I'll tell you, I went to the White House with a number of my colleagues, Gavin and Josh included, and Wes as well. And we had to sit down with the president. There's no question in my mind that he's ready to take this on. I had a conversation with him and all of our co-chairs last weekend. Same thing. He's a fighter. He's ready to go. He had a bad night. He'll be the first to admit it. It was terrible. Yet here we are. We've got a choice between an affirmative vote for Joe Biden or anything else is a vote for Donald Trump. And a second Trump presidency will be devastating. A second Trump presidency will take us further down the line of taking away individual rights, of a worse and more intolerant nation with bigger discrepancies in income. I think that it's a dangerous prospect. Joe Biden wants to continue the work. He's made record investments in onshoring manufacturing and the growth that we're seeing in our supply chains. We're stronger. We're getting stronger every day. That all can be undone. We got a president who's going to fight for every one of us, Black community, the brown community, women, and our rights. I think that he's got a record of doing that, and he's going to continue to do it for the next 4 years. And that's why I'm unwavering in my support of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. I think that they are great leaders. We're fortunate to have them. They've got the receipts, and they got a plan for the next 4 years. The other guy represents a real, clear, and present danger.
Chapter 4 is surround yourself with great people. Don't be afraid to ask for help. When you think about the surrogates like yourself, the Wes Moores, Governor Shapiro's, Vice President, I rock with all of them, right? Is President Biden the kind of leader that will ask y'all for help?
Yes. And you know what? I think another thing to remember is during the Trump years, remember his cabinet? It was a bunch of cronies and crooks. These were people that were, I think not experts in the fields in which they were hired. I can talk about the Department of Education because Betsy DeVos is from Michigan. Mm-hmm. Biden, on the other hand, has got a diverse cabinet that is incredibly skilled, that he leans on. You got Gina Raimondo and Pete Buttigieg and Tom Vilsack. He's got Cedric Richmond, very much big part of his operation. And obviously the vice president, he surrounds himself with quality people who are doing the work and showing up and actually care about the American people. And I think that's a real fundamental difference here. He does listen. He asks questions. He says, give me some advice. And, we've been pretty frank, had some pretty frank conversations about giving some input.
You think
Salute to Secretary Pete, too, because he comes to the
Breakfast Club all the time.
And I often feel like y'all should be offended And the reason I say y'all should be offended is because people will say, is this the best America has to offer? Is this the best the Democratic Party has to offer in Biden? And it does kind of like, make yourself and the Westmores and the Shapiros and the Buttigiegs and the VP look like, damn, they're all better to me than, the current leader of the party.
Well, all these people we're gonna see do incredible things for the short term and the long term.
Mm-hmm.
So we're fortunate in that one. I understand that sentiment, and I got kids. They're 22 and 20, and they're they're not as excited as I would love for them to be, and yet I know they're going to vote because they understand their rights to make their own decisions about their bodies, their ability to get housing after they graduate from college and try to get an affordable place to live. That is on their minds. Their ability to, live a long life in a climate that can sustain humanity, right? Gun violence. This generation has grown up doing mass shooting drills. We can't even appreciate what kind of trauma that's inflicted on this generation. They are engaged in a way that we weren't. And so the fact that there maybe Joe Biden doesn't resonate as well with every one of, every voter that's out there. I think that every voter can see a voice, a person that is a part of this effort that does, though. And I think that kind of Avenger-style campaign and leadership has got to be a part of how we go forward. I've
been saying that. I would rather see his surrogates out there.
Do you want to see him debate again? Do you think he should debate again?
I don't know. It doesn't seem as though people go into debates with open minds these days. I do agree with you that, having surrogates out there is powerful and incredibly helpful. And I know, a lot of my colleagues and standard bearers for the party are going to be descending into Michigan, and I'm excited about that because I want people to see, I want people to get to know, all of these leaders that are doing the work and that are a part of the work that President Biden has gotten done. I want them to hear from them too.
But why lie to American people? And what I mean by that is, like, George Stephanopoulos just got caught saying he doesn't feel like he can serve another 4 years, President Biden. So even if that is people's, sentiment, why not say, hey, this is why you should still vote for him? Like, why can't we have that conversation?
Yeah, I was not happy to see those comments, obviously. I disagree with George, and I have a great deal of respect for him, but I disagree with him. And I challenge anyone who's out there opining about someone's health. Oh, my Lord. We've spent 2 weeks litigating the bad 90 minutes of Joe Biden, and not enough time litigating the 4 horrific years of Donald Trump. Let's be clear. This is a choice between 2 people. Yes, there are some third-party candidates, but you vote for one of them, that is helping Donald Trump. And so anything short of an affirmative vote for Biden is a vote for Trump. And I think whether it's because you're appalled at that possibility or you're confident and have faith in President Biden and Kamala Harris, and let's be clear, that's why we have a team. In case one person can't do the job, you got a backup. That's what the vice presidency is all about, and she's incredibly capable. This is not the time to keep wringing our hands. We got to roll up our sleeves because we got a lot of work to do.
Do you think people should challenge him at the convention coming up?
Yes.
I don't. I respect that there are different opinions, but I don't. I think right now we know what the matchup is.
But he keeps asking for it. Last year he said there's about 50 other Democrats who could beat Trump. Last week he goes, hey,
challenge me at the convention.
Yeah, he's asking for it.
Well, I'm glad to see him show a little swagger, frankly. But by the same token, this isn't fantasy football. We are beyond the primaries and we are beyond the caucuses. The matchup is set, and the only person that changes that matchup is Joe Biden. He's made his decision. He's communicated it. So let's go.
Just talk about Michigan because it's a huge battleground state. Over 100,000 primary voters cast uncommitted votes back in February because of the Biden administration's funding of the Israel military and the war on Palestine. Does that concern you about how Michigan will turn out in November?
Yeah, of course it does. The great story of Michigan is that we are the place people came to from around the world for opportunity. And because of that, we got a richly diverse population, right? People came from the South for a job on the line. People came from Lebanon for a job on the line. People came from Holland for a job in, the muck fields on the west side of the state, or from Finland for a job in mining in the Upper Peninsula. I mean, we're a very diverse state, and it's a great strength. It also is made up of communities, all of these communities that I've been able to count on as a part of the coalition that's always supported my candidacy for office, and I'm grateful for that. Everyone's hurting right now. That's the only universal truth. Our Jewish community is in pain. We've seen the rise of anti-Semitism, the horrors of October 7th, the hostages that still haven't been released. My Arab American and Muslim community and Palestinian community, and it's important to single them all out because it's not monolithic. They are different communities within one larger community. They're hurting because they see the loss of innocent lives every single day playing out. There's so many people in Michigan that are 1 degree or 2 degrees of separation from someone who's lost their life in this altercation, or someone who's starving right now. And so I think one of the lessons in my book is about the power of listening. We got to show up and listen. We've got to show people that we care. Staying close to my Arab American community, staying close with my Jewish community, it is really important. And recognizing the pain that everyone's feeling is as well. But I also want to be clear that Donald Trump presidency sure as hell ain't going to fix what's going on in the Middle East.
I mean, no.
It could measurably make it worse. You hear some of the crazy things that he has said, some of what his supporters have said. You think we want a 2-state solution where everyone can have a safe homeland? That's not something that he's promoting. And I think it will make it measurably worse. And that's why, I understand the pain and that people are feeling checked out and unheard. That's why the listening part is so important. That's why I say listening is a superpower in my book. And I think that's something that Biden does better than Trump does. He's an empathetic guy who actually cares about people.
What would your message be to the Muslim Arab community in Michigan in regard to supporting President Biden come November? Because, 50,000, innocent people killed is tough to see.
Oh, yeah, no, yeah. It's horrific.
Women and children.
Yeah. Men too. I know everyone points to women and children, but there are a lot of innocent men who've lost their lives too. I mean, it is horrific. And yet, if we want to have a leader of the free world who sees that, who cares about leading for a 2-state solution, who's never going to campaign on like a Muslim ban or child separation at the border for brown families coming into this country, I mean, that's Joe Biden. There's no question who the better leader is on all of these issues, and it's Joe Biden.
Chapter 9, you talk about owning your screw-ups and forgiving others for theirs. And I read where you wanted to actually meet with someone from the far-right militia that plotted to kidnap and assassinate you.
Yeah.
I don't know if my forgiveness works that way.
Yeah, why?
I don't
That's a
know
little
if
crazy.
I would want to have that conversation.
Well,
what do you hope to gain from
when
it?
I wrote that, I didn't know it would get such a strong reaction, but it has. So you're in the majority. I'm in the minority.
They're trying to kidnap you
one.
and kill you.
What do you hope to gain from?
There were 12 to 14 guys who were out there planning for months to kidnap and then hold a sham trial and execute me. That was their plan, and they had a kill house. They went through all these exercises to practice. The text messages are horrific. Fortunately, law enforcement, had infiltrated. They had an informer, and they were able to keep it from happening, and I'm grateful for that. Did
they tell you early on that this was happening? Did you know through the whole process, or?
Not through the whole process, but I knew a few months before it became public. The head of my security detail sat down with me. I talk a little bit about it in the book. And shared it with me. And someone was, giving me a hard time because they said, oh, the way you told your kids, said, oh, by the way, there's a plot to kidnap and kill me, but it's okay. We're going to be fine. Like it's said it like that. Very, I don't know, practical or strange, but whatever. I want to understand what happened. It is not a rational thing that you pick up guns and want to assassinate a sitting governor because she told you to wear a mask. That's not rational. That did not happen all over the country. It happened in this unique circumstances. Why? I would like to understand. So I'd love to, have the chance to sit down maybe with one of the people that cooperated with the government and testified against their fellow plotters.
We call those snitches.
Did their time.
That's fine.
Well, I'm grateful that there were a couple of snitches.
Yeah, that's right.
Like to just sit down and ask, what was going on here? And show I'm a human being. I'm a normal person. I'm an ordinary person in an extraordinary job, serving in a crazy time. But I'd like to understand, and if I can learn something that'll make me a better human or a better governor, then it's worth doing.
Have you forgiven them yet?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. How does the forgiveness thing work in regards to like politicians? Like, can you forgive Trump for leading an attempted coup in this country? Can you give the Supreme Court for abolishing Roe v. Wade? Like, does your forgiveness work that way too?
Well, I think if you own it, yeah. I think if you say, you have learned or you regret, then yeah, I think it is. You can forgive.
But if you're fighting actively against it, though,
well, he hasn't owned it, and he hasn't. They're trying to spin it as though it was a harmless group of tourists. They're trying to spin it as though the people that were tearing down our Capitol and are the reason that officers have lost their lives were patriots doing this. That's what they're trying to tell us. Like, don't believe your lying eyes. This was a peaceful group. Baloney. And so I don't forgive that. I'm mad about that still because that was a horrific thing to see. I sat there with my daughters watching this play out in the United States Capitol, and everyone was so shocked. And I thought, if you're shocked, you weren't paying attention to what was going on in Michigan. We saw the early signs of this with people showing up with guns standing over our legislature. And sitting outside my house with AR-15s threatening to kill me. I mean, this is a part of the rhetoric that Donald Trump has made so common and the reaction that is predictable because of what he's done. And he's shown no remorse for that, not even an understanding of how serious that was. And that's why I think you see so many people who used to call themselves Republicans are looking at him going, I can't do it. But there still are a lot of people who are going to support him, and I don't forgive him for that.
Do you think it's because you're a woman? Because there are a lot of governors that said you have to wear masks. There's a lot of people that came out and said that you have to wear masks, but none of them I can recall had plots on their life for kidnapping and killing.
Yeah. Well, I convened a group of governors during COVID to kind of share what we were seeing, help one another when we could. It was the Midwest governors, Tim Walz from Minnesota, Tony Evers from Wisconsin, J.B. Pritzker from Illinois, Eric Holcomb from Indiana, Republican, Mike DeWine from Ohio, also Republican, and Andy Beshear from Kentucky, good friend, and another great talent. All of them are. I think all the Democratic governors are fantastic. And we were chatting about, everything that was playing out. And one of my colleagues said, Gretchen, you're doing all the same things that we're doing. But why are you taking so much more heat for it? And when the last word landed, he said, oh, wait, don't answer that. I know. It's because you are the woman doing it. And so I'm not the one who raises, okay, I'm dealing with this because I'm a woman. But I appreciate when someone else points it out because I do think that that's a part of it. I don't want that woman telling me what to do. And we didn't have a black governor during the pandemic. I don't know the extra kind of heat that a black governor would have confronted, but I know that the women governors did deal with a whole higher intensity of hate that came our way.
Oh, I agree with you because when your name comes up as being a presidential candidate, I always say, man, I think that this country in a lot of ways is more sexist than racist. I don't know if they would vote as qualified as you are.
We've seen it with Hillary, right?
Huh?
We've seen it with Hillary.
That's my point. Like, I don't know if they would. It's the same reason that they're so afraid of Vice President Harris. Like when you hear people say, "Oh, you should be scared of President Harris," you should be scared of a President Harris running. I'm like, why? What would her policies wouldn't be any different than any other Democrat? So what would make them afraid other than her being a woman and a woman of color?
Yeah, I mean that I think you're making an important point. I was kind of marveling watching the news this morning. Nikki Haley was taking a shot at Kamala Harris. And it just really struck me that these are two women of Indian descent, and she's saying things like Kamala Harris would be dangerous, and it's just, it's galling to me to watch that play out. I was hopeful, I thought she was somewhat of a voice of reason in that primary, and yet, she's just thrown her lot in, and with the team that she was so critical of over the last year and a half and attacking Kamala Harris. And I don't know. It's just, maybe that's why we haven't had a woman president yet because you see stuff like that play out.
Do you think you could be the first?
I don't have any plans to run for anything after this term as governor. It's, it's certainly a compliment to be included in the list of people whose names come up all the time. But, I got a big job right now. I got 2.5 more years to be governor of Michigan. I got a lot more that I want to get accomplished, and I'm not thinking about anything beyond that.
You could write shark blood motherfucker, shark week motherfucker on the paper, and then you could go for it.
Did you hear G-Mac Cash's song about you, Big Gretch?
Oh man, I love G-Mac Cash. He sent me an email yesterday. He said, "Good luck on GMA. I'm rooting for you, bestie." So, yeah.
Okay.
We're
not best friends, but I like to think that we're very good friends.
How did you feel when you heard the record, and who put you onto it?
Okay, so first it started with the nickname Big Gretch.
Big Gretch.
Big Gretch. So, first of all, I'm named after my 2 grandmas, Gretchen and Esther. They're both in the book, but Grandma Gretchen always said, don't ever let anyone call you Gretch. Your name is Gretchen. So I've always had an aversion to being called Gretch. Mm-hmm. I don't know many women that want big in the front of their nickname. Am I right?
Big Gretch. Well, it depends. If you're heavy set, we say you got a big back. But big can mean like position as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's all good now.
Yeah,
but, when I first heard the name Big Gretch, I'm like, oh, Lord, what is happening here? And Shaquille Myers, someone on my team at the time from Detroit, was like, oh, no, you don't understand. The people of Detroit have accepted you. Big Gretch is a compliment. It is given with love. And I was like, all right, tell me more. And then in Detroit, a symbol of success is buffs. Mm-hmm. So the Buffalo Cartier sunglasses.
Buff glasses, yep.
Yeah, so you got to have the buff. So
you have a pair?
When I don't own buffs, I mean, I don't have that kind of money, and I don't trust myself with expensive sunglasses. But they present you with buffs, like they don't literally present you with buffs, but it's a saying. And so they was like, okay, I'm presented with buffs. What the hell are buffs, Shaquilla? So she's educating me. But then G-Mac made it into the rap song, and I just love it. I think Big Gretch has become this nickname I never knew that I needed. It was given to me. Trump was kicking my butt. He was making my life miserable. I was getting all sorts of threats and ugliness, and this happened at a time where I really, appreciated the boost. And everywhere I go, especially in Detroit, I'm Big Gretch.
So Big Gretch, Gravity Gretch, which one do you like more?
Big Gretch is my
Big
favorite.
Gretch.
Yes.
Big Gretch.
Big Gretch has to go.
Okay, I got one more question. Well, 2. You could actually get the buff glasses now because the Supreme Court made it to where you can get bribes. So you can have the money if you want.
Yeah.
But why aren't people saying the Supreme Court is no longer a legitimate institution? Why aren't folks calling them out for their corruption?
I am, and I was glad to see Sheldon Whitehouse send a letter to Merrick Garland. I don't know if he's going to do anything about it, but I hope he does, because it is so depressing and sad to me. I'm a lawyer. I was raised by, 2 public servants who also were lawyers, though, and who revered the judicial system, that it was the check on government, that it was above the politics of the day. We saw that over the years where decisions came out, even if you didn't agree with them, you respected them because they were grounded in some, interpretation of the Constitution, not a political agenda. And yet we've seen now, Trump remade the Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. 3 appointees who lied to Congress about Roe v. Wade and went on and just eviscerated women's reproductive freedom. That is on this ballot. A majority now who has said that a president has, this vast immunity now, that the law doesn't apply to the person who we elect as our president. It is scary, and it is terribly frustrating to have all the presumptions I was raised to believe that you could count on that court thrown into the garbage in a dumpster, and it's a real problem. And I'm glad to see some folks in Congress are taking it seriously. But man, we need a better mechanism to hold them accountable.
Do you still think it's a legitimate institution, the Supreme Court?
I think that they've bastardized it. Mm-hmm. I hate to say it.
Mm-hmm. You shouldn't. It's the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hate the fact of it.
Mm-hmm.
We deserve better. And those justices took an oath, and man, it's just horrible to see that not even they're holding it up.
So Biden needs to expand the courts, right?
Well, I'm not going to tell the president what to do, but we do need a system that is actually accountable to the people, and it has to abide by a certain ethical standard and is reined in by, the law.
If you were president, would you expand the Supreme Court right now?
I haven't. It's a good question. I don't know that I've got a thoughtful answer for you yet.
Mm. The answer should be yes.
Well, the answer is I ain't running for president, so there.
All right.
Last question. When you see people from Michigan or Detroit, do you greet them with "What up, though"?
Yeah, absolutely. That's how we greet one another. What up, Doe? You know, I got to tell you, Detroit hosted the NFL draft.
Yep.
And man, it was the most fun event. Detroit's population has grown for the first time in 70 years. We had a record draft turnout. And then we had the Grand Prix the next week, and then the opening of Detroit, Michigan Central Station, the old train station that Bill Ford, decided to plow a bunch of resources into. And now it's like this hub of R&D, and it's an exciting time. We had, Eminem produced a big party at the opening. I mean, there's so much good stuff happening in Detroit and all across Michigan. And so, what up, Doe, to the listeners from Detroit?
Well, 42 Doug is here, so you'll be able to say that to him in a second.
Excellent.
You'll probably see him in the hallway.
All right. Well, it's the governor, Gretchen Whitmer. We appreciate you for joining us. Thank you so much.
Governor of Michigan. Pleasure. Make sure you go get her new book, True Gretch, What I've Learned About Life, Leadership, and Everything in Between. And don't be a stranger.
Please.
All right.
We're on a lot of stations in Michigan.
Yes.
I know. I'll come back.
Yeah. Please do.
All right. Thank you.
It's the Breakfast Club. Good morning.
Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.